Nymeria Sand is one of the Sand Snakes, the bastard daughters of Oberyn Martell. She is another case of her character technically being part of Game of Thrones, but with her story and character so far removed from the book that for all intents and purpose, she is a different character, and thus I view her as a missing character. Her mother is said to be a noblewoman from the free city of Volantis in Essos, being born in around the year 274 AC, which would make her the second eldest of the Sand Snakes, with her elder sister Obara born in 271 AC. This would make her around the age of 24 to 25 at the start of the main book series. She's named after the legendary Dornish historical figure Nymeria, who escaped the wrath of old Valyria with the remainder of her people in 1,000 ships, eventually settling in Dorne and marrying into House Martell. However, Nymeria Sand often goes by the nickname Nym. Nymeria is described as slim and slender as a willow tree, with straight black hair, worn in a long braid, which pulls back from a widow's peak. She has large dark eyes. She has full lips, wine red and curved in a silken smile, and she has high cheekbones. Ariohota describes her as having pale white skin, but she's also described as having olive skin in A Dance with Dragons. Nymeria is said to have all the grace and beauty that her elder sister Obara Sands lacks. Despite her looks, though, she is no less deadly in her own way, being described as vengeful. Nymeria dresses gracefully, in shimmering lilac robes with a silk cape of cream and copper, and she also owns a yellow silk gown, so sheer that it reveals spun gold and jewels worn underneath. Nymeria rides a gold sand steed with a mane like white silk. She usually conceals 12 daggers on her person, and is proficient with the hidden blades. Unlike her elder sister Obara, we know very little about Nymeria's personal history other than that her mother comes from the noblest blood of old Volantis, the free city in Essos in which she was born. Unlike her sister Obara, who was born to an old town whore, we don't know the circumstances of how Nymeria came into the care of her father, if he actively sought her out like Obara, or if some tragedy befell her mother, with Nymeria being sent to live in Dorne with her father. Given that she supposedly comes from the noblest blood of Volantis, it does beg the question as to how she did end up in Dorne. As a child, young Nymeria would often join in at the child's play at the water gardens with her sister, Nymeria Sand, her cousin Princess Arianne Martell, Garin, Andri Dalt, and Sylvia Santagar. At one point, she gifted her cousin Arianne an ornate throwing knife, which Arianne keeps in her boot to this day. Nymeria is first introduced during a feast for crows, where we find her abed with the Fowler twins, Jane and Jenlyn. She is told of the death of her father, Oberyn Martell, in King's Landing, defending Tyrion Lannister during a trial by combat. Her father's plan was to force a confession from his opponent, Sir Gregor Clegane, for the murder of his sister Elia Martell and her children during the sack of King's Landing at the end of Robert's Rebellion. Sir Damon Sand later sends her a raven explaining how Gregor Clegane was poisoned by Oberyn, who had secretly poisoned the tip of his spear before the duel, and thus Sir Gregor was dying a slow and painful death. Accompanied by 12 mounted spearmen, Nymeria meets Doran Martell, the Prince of Dorne, and Oberyn's elder brother, when he is en route from the Water Garden to Sunspear. She demands vengeance for the death of her father and rejects the offer Lord Tywin Lannister made Doran for Gregor's head. Instead of open war, Nymeria wants to assassinate Tywin, his children, Queen Regent Cersei Lannister, and Sir Jaime Lannister, and his grandchild, King Tommen I Baratheon. She tells Doran that while Obara would make Oldtown their father's funeral pyre, that she is not so greedy, and that the deaths of the Lannisters would be enough. After visits from Nymeria's other sisters, Doran has the Sand Snakes arrested and confined in the Spear Tower of Sunspear. Nymeria and her sisters are released from the Spear Tower, and are present at the feast at Sunspear, when Sir Balon Swann presents Sir Gregor's skull to Doran. It is noted that Balon seems discomfited by her sheer silk gown. When Balon tells of the manner of Gregor's death, Nymeria celebrates his suffering, while her elder sister Obara seems more suspect of the validity of Balon's claims. When Ricasso raises a toast to King Tommen, Nymeria declines with a flick of her wrist. Later, Doran orders Nymeria to travel to King's Landing with Myrcella Baratheon, while Trystane Martell, her betrothed, remains in Sunspear. where she is to take her father's seat at the Small Council. Currently, she and Myrcella are on their way to King's Landing, at the end of A Dance with Dragons. Kevan Lannister, who is acting as a regent for King Tommen, is quite displeased to hear Nymeria will soon be arriving at King's Landing, from what he has heard from his spies about the kind of person she is. In view of her negative reputation and the enmity between Dorne and Highgarden, he predicts that her presence will result in unpleasantries with Mace Tyrell until we get to the Winds of Winter. That is all we currently know of Nymeria Sand. Obviously, one of the fundamental differences between Nymeria in the book versus the show comes down to how the Dornish storyline as a whole was changed, namely how in the show, the Sand Snakes and thus Nymeria are part of a plot to overthrow and kill their uncle, Doran, which is not something I believe Nymeria's book character would ever do. Interestingly, I feel that Doran does trust Nymeria somewhat by sending her to King's Landing to sit on the Small Council, not a task for someone Doran did not trust given the importance of the role. Some fans have also rightly pointed out that Doran, while trusting Nymeria, is selective about what he tells her in regards to his wider plans, not necessarily because of her, but her close relationship with the Fowler twins, whom are well known for their loose tongues and gossiping. Nymeria seems to show a lot more restraint than her elder sister, who wants to sack Oldtown in their father's honour. Rather, Nymeria sets her sights on a more personal target of the Lannisters. In fact, what I find most compelling about her character is when she finds out about Tywin Lannister's death at the hands of his own son Tyrion. She actually seems quite dejected and disappointed. When discussing it with her father's paramour, Ellaria, she laments that while Tywin did die at his son's own hand, she wished that it had been her hand, as she would not have made dying so easy for him, highlighting how her anger and rage targeted more personally to Tywin than say Obara's is. All this to me highlights how badly the Sand Snakes were treated in the show as characters. In truth, they were not even that. They were caricatures of one or two aspects of their personalities, and not the complex and interesting individuals they are in the books. Characters that truly do add to the story, rather than just exist within it.